Welcome to Beyond the Medical Algorithm, a podcast by the Philly Wellness Center. Join us on a journey through the too often neglected path to wellness, where we celebrate the human body and all things natural to illuminate new roads to health and happiness. Holistic is the name of the game, and I'll be talking to fellow experts and enthusiasts to rejoice in healing and revolutionize the way we approach therapy. I'm your host, Catie Harris. Hi, everybody. So on today's episode of Beyond the Medical Algorithm, we're thrilled to welcome Thais Gibson. She's a distinguished counselor, coach, and best-selling author, renowned for her expertise in the fields of personal development and relationship dynamics. Thais is the creator of the Gibson Integrated Attachment Theory, a modern expansion of traditional attachment theory that empowers individuals to heal and transform their relationships. With a PhD and over 13 certifications and modalities, including cognitive behavioral therapy and trauma work, Thais has profoundly impacted the personal development landscape. She currently leads the Personal Development School, an innovative online platform offering courses that facilitate deep personal transformation in relationships and self-awareness. Her best-selling book, Learning Love, provides invaluable insights into forming secure and fulfilling relationships through understanding and healing attachment styles. So join us as we explore Thais Gibson's revolutionary approaches to transforming personal and relational health, providing tools and insights that promise to change lives. Welcome, Thais.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here with you.
Yeah, me too. That was quite an opening. So I'm very excited to learn about what you do and why you're doing it. I mean, you have an extensive background in cognitive therapies and a passion for understanding human behavior. So what sparked your interest in relationships and emotional dynamics?
I think honestly, just coming from a home where there was a really tough divorce and a lot of fighting and just difficult dynamics growing up, and being really in the middle of that from a very young age. So from a very early start, I was very curious about why things have to be the way that they are, and why isn't there a better or easier way? And so went through a lot of my own kind of challenges, trying to navigate my own relationships, different challenges I was facing, and got really interested in not just relationships and attachment theory, but also the subconscious mind. Because first of all, our conscious mind cannot outwill or overpower our subconscious mind. And our subconscious mind is responsible for 95 to 97% of all of our beliefs and thoughts and emotions and actions. So a lot of the work that I do is helping people, if they're changing their relationship dynamics, not just try to will their way out of things by trying to use their conscious mind to outwill their subconscious mind, but instead to help them understand what programming exists there, what conditioned patterns we've learned. If we saw relationships are all about fighting and arguing growing up, that's probably going to be your subconscious comfort zone and the type of relationships that you may invest in. And so I really help people unpack what their conditioned patterns are, and then spend a lot of work helping people recondition those very same patterns.
That's amazing. So 90 to 95% is what you said of the subconscious is how we respond?
95 to 97%.
Even worse. Okay.
All of our beliefs, our thoughts, emotions, and actions or decisions on a daily basis. So it's really the powerhouse of our lives, and it's really what's running the show. Our conscious mind, and you see this all throughout society. You've seen people go, I'm going to set a New Year's resolution to eat healthy and to lose weight. And then 3 or 4 days in, they can't seem to will themselves into that. Or on the flip side, people say, I'm going to break a bad habit. I'm going to stop yelling at my partner, or I'm going to stop drinking so heavily in the evenings. We tell ourselves all these things. But at the end of the day, the reason we don't follow through is because if our subconscious mind has different motives at play, has different needs that it's trying to meet, or different limiting beliefs that we're carrying, those very same things will end up being that glass ceiling that we hit. And so rather than trying to will ourselves out of these different habits that we do want to have or that we don't want to have, we can actually recondition these patterns.
And how do people go about? So if I do make a New Year's resolution and I want to lose 20 pounds and 5 days into it, what could I do differently? How would I even approach that?
Okay, so there's 2 major underlying facets that really make all of our decisions at the subconscious level. On one hand, we have our needs, and the other, we have our beliefs. Every single decision that we make throughout the day is our subconscious mind trying to get different needs met than what often our conscious mind intends. Every choice we make all day long is basically a strategy to get needs met. Now, if we look at how needs are actually structured, we all have a different hierarchy of what we call personality needs, the needs that basically our personality is made up of. So I'll share an example with you. So I had a client once back in the day when I was running my own practice, and I had this client come in and say exactly that. She said, I want to lose weight. I want to eat healthier. And I just seemed to go through the same pattern over and over and over again. So we looked. Her major personality needs, there's a few questions you can ask yourself that we can always come back to, but her major personality needs were social connection, family, comfort, and security. So conscious mind says, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to eat healthy. Her subconscious mind says, no, that's going to take time away from comfort, security, family, and social connection. So what we do is we learn to understand what our own needs are, and then we align the two together. So what does that look like for her? Well, we had her go to group fitness classes, join a hiking club with her spouse, take a cooking class with her husband, go play at the park and do more active things with her children. We had her get into a space where she would do things exercise-wise that she felt comfortable doing because comfort was a big need. And if she was going to stretch herself to do things like go to the gym or lift weights to prepare so she could feel secure because security was a big need, we had her make sure that she was just watching educational tutorials ahead of time so she knew what to do and wouldn't go into a space where she felt so out of her element. And when she had somebody there with her socially or friendship-wise, family-wise to go into the gym with her, all of those things together helped her really move the needle. So rather than doing this thing that we do where we try to will ourselves through things, we have to understand what's actually going on beneath the surface. So that's the one branch of it, is lining up our conscious mind's goals with our subconscious mind's needs. I'm going to share one other thing on the needs tangent before we move to the limiting belief side of things. But one thing that's really interesting is when you see a lot of people eat unhealthy food, for example, what's often taking place is if you look at our earliest subconscious programmed associations of food, it's our mother's breast milk. It's when we're being breastfed as children. And what's happening is the mother and the child, both when breastfeeding is taking place, produce a tremendous amount of oxytocin, which is the bonding neurochemical. And so when you take a child and you have them being breastfed, their earliest associations with food a lot of the time are emotional connection because of oxytocin, and comfort and safety because you're being held, you're being cradled by that primary caregiver, that person you have such a big connection to. So when people are often starving for food and they're eating junk food and they think that that's what they're starving for, often what they're actually experiencing is hungering for connection, for comfort, for safety. So you can see how these needs really deeply affect so many areas of our lives, especially when we're not consciously aware of them. So that's one branch of things, is the needs side. The other side is we have limiting beliefs. And we really move through life with this belief system intact. Now, how we acquire limiting beliefs in our childhood or upbringing is if we have an experience that we can't properly emotionally process, we give it meaning instead, and then we store that meaning, hoping to protect ourselves from it in the future. So let's just take a really simple example. Let's say that you have a child who grows up in a home where there are a lot of critical happenings from the parents. Okay, parents are critical, they're criticizing. Maybe the parents are trying to do the best that they can. They're just trying to prepare the child for the world, but the child doesn't necessarily understand that. So maybe they store that as something like, I'm not good enough, or I'm going to be rejected or disliked. So then what happens is, because of repetition and emotion of those experiences that we can't process, it's actually repetition and emotion that fires and wires neural pathways. So now we build this circuitry of our own identity saying, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm disliked, I'm rejected. For other people, it's I'm not capable, I'm unworthy, I'm undeserving. So going back to that woman, she first had to align her needs, her conscious goals, eat healthier, go to the gym, exercise, with her subconscious needs. But then we had to check in with her limiting beliefs. And she had a belief, I am incapable of change, because she had a few really pivotal moments in her own upbringing where she tried to do things and she couldn't. And she found her parents kind of meet her with like, it's fine, we'll do it for you. So she built this belief that she couldn't change on her own. And so we actually had to go in and recondition that belief, leveraging repetition and emotion of this new idea and experience. And we can talk about that in more detail if you'd like. But as we reprogram or recondition those beliefs and then align with the needs, all of a sudden, all the sludge that existed between our conscious goals and all the tailwind that we're experiencing from the subconscious level is cleared out of the way. And now we'll experience less resistance and much more natural motivation.
Oh, wow. And when you first talked about the needs aligning with what the conscious wants, how do you work with people to figure out what those needs are? I mean, is it something difficult? Is it like deep therapy that you need to go through? Is it more like something anybody could really figure out if they stop and think about it?
Yeah, everybody can figure it out if they stop and think about it. I mean, there's basically core ways that you can look at it. Number one, your needs are in your behaviors, not your desires. Okay. So desires are conscious mind. I want to make more money. But subconscious mind may say, yeah, but I prefer to actually spend my time doing these things over here instead. So that's the first thing is we have to look at what we are already doing because that reflects back our behavior. Then we ask ourselves a series of questions. And these are, what do I spend my free time doing? And if it's entertainment related things, you're always watching television or video games or whatever it is, there can be an entertainment or fun need. If you see that you spend a lot of time creating things, maybe you're very artistic or you paint, there's a creativity or self expression need. If you look at times where in your free time you're trying to get better at things, achieve more, grow your business, there's a big achievement need. There's career growth needs, financial needs. There's basically 30 or so major ones, but you're looking for patterns that are, what do I spend my free time doing? Where do I spend my money? Everybody spends money on their needs. I have a big health need that's popped up in the last few years. I spend so much money on supplements. That's my go-to. So people will see that, right? Those places they always spend money. Personal growth has been a big need for me. I spend a lot of money on courses and things like that. Career achievement is a big one. So I grow my business and talk to people and get mentorship. So anyways, you'll see these things in your behaviors. Where do you spend your free time? Where do you spend your money? What do you naturally read and research about? Definitely reflects back to people what their needs are. What triggers you the most, which is a very interesting one because you can see, for example, somebody who has a big family need, somebody says something negative about a family member, they're going to get so triggered. For me, I have a big freedom need. So if I feel like freedom is infringed on, I don't like that. It doesn't feel good. So you'll see these different dynamics and how they tend to play out. Then you can also look at where you are most organized and reliable. It's such an interesting one because people in their needs are very organized. I have a dear friend who thinks he's the most unorganized person. He says, I'm so unorganized. I'm so unorganized. But you know what he's really organized for? His social time. He never is late to a social event. He always organizes for all of our friend group. He takes care of everything. So he's not organized at work because it's not filling those social needs, but he has such a big social need that you'll see that show up in those sorts of ways. So we're all organized in those particular areas. And when you look a little bit deeper, you'll also see that people tend to naturally light up or talk to other people the most, which is our last question, about the things that their personality needs. So for me, I'll probably gear the conversation with a friend towards personal growth or health or emotional connection or freedom, because those are big things for me. Whereas somebody else might be like gearing their conversation towards novelty or travel, exploration, these things that are different and important for them. So hopefully those questions can help just to your listeners really narrow those things down.
I'm like starting to fill it out myself here. It's like, that's really interesting.
And do you see some of your patterns? Like you'll see that there are really patterns that emerge from it. What did you notice come up for you?
Well, when I first started my first business and even my current business, but more so in that one, it was like, I want to start a successful business. I want to generate 6 figures or something like that. And that was the want. But then it was like, I spent my first year tweaking a webinar for some reason. Like I wasn't doing anything to make money. I was only doing things that were costing me money. And I was just kind of like hiding from the business. I'm like, this is not working. I'm doing something really wrong here.
That to me, I hear in there like a security or comfort need. Sometimes if we have a big security need, we'll really like hone in on all of the details. Like you said, you spend all this time tweaking the webinar to make it perfect. Sometimes if we have a big security need, we won't want to do anything or put ourselves out there until it's perfect because then we feel secure. Does that resonate with you in other areas of life a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting because I don't think I appreciated personal development until I started my business. And when I started going to different business masterminds and stuff, personal development stuff kept coming up. And I was just like, oh, that's not me. That's not me. I'm not interested in that. And then the business stalled so much that I'm finally like, it's clearly me. I'm clearly the problem here. Then I started really diving into personal development and it really helped me to move forward. I mean, it was incredible, like how much I was blocking stuff, like just success.
That's so cool. That's a great story too. And it's nice because sometimes those hard moments of feeling stuck or having to hit those like rock bottom moments, we're like, okay, fine, I'll look for other things. Sometimes they're not fun moments, but sometimes they're so transformational and they serve us for years to come. So I think that's a great story.
Right. It's definitely something that I spend a lot of time. And you talk about what do you spend your money on? Yeah, I spend a lot of money on courses and personal development and a life fix. It's vital for the business to survive, for me to be better.
I love that. And I feel like that's so true about being like an entrepreneur too. You always have to be evolving. So it's putting yourself in that space helps because the more you evolve internally, you see things differently. So yeah, couldn't agree more.
Now, you have a personal development school, is that correct?
Yes, I do.
So tell us a little bit about why you created that, what it is, and what you do with it.
Well, I was obsessed with personal development. So that's probably why I created it. I worked in client practice for the better part of 10 years and had a really busy wait list. This is honestly just how it started. And people were getting frustrated with me. I had like a 2-year wait list. People were like, hey, you said it was going to be at this time. It's not. And then it's hard to say to clients that want to keep working with you, sorry, like you have to leave. So it was just this kind of muddy situation. So I started teaching these classes for people who I couldn't fit in on the weekends. And I would teach like a Saturday morning 2-hour class and bring all the people in who weren't able to jump into one-to-one sessions right away. And what ended up happening is I just had somebody come along because I was honestly just burning the candle at both ends a little bit. Like I was so busy with work. Somebody was like, you're trading your time for money and you should just make this scalable so you don't have to work like this. And I had all these pre-existing programs that I would teach live for people as like workshops. I had like 9 or 10 different ones. And we decided we were just going to record them, package them as courses. And about the same time, I started putting a little bit of content on YouTube. And we just saw a lot of growth and a lot of demand. And it just became, okay, let's try launching this as a little school. And that was in 2019. And I wrote 60 courses ever since. So we have a total of 60 courses in there. They cover all topics, but it's personal development for the subconscious mind. So if we have boundary issues, how do we recondition your boundaries? Communication issues, what's your programming around it? How do we change it? And it really leverages the science of neuroplasticity for transformation. Because again, if we are not targeting the subconscious mind, we're just trying to will our way through life with our conscious mind, it can feel really difficult. So we have a ton of different courses that focus on everything from relationships to career transformation to personal growth topics like boundaries or communication or reconditioning limiting beliefs. And we have students come in every week and they jump in there and they're part of the sort of framework that we have. They take whichever courses they want. And then we have daily support for people. So we do webinars every day. We have peer support groups, basically that allow for people to come in different time zones and just get that extra small group support and community support as needed.
That's a huge undertaking.
I have a really good team. It's not just me.
That's amazing. So when somebody comes in, let's say with me, if I had these security issues, like would you work through what your issues are first and then you kind of pick and choose the different types of courses that you would take?
Yeah, so it starts with you take an onboarding quiz, and based on what you're facing and struggling with, you'll get spit out like a series of recommendations. And then you can attend those like peer support groups and live events that trend towards those recommendations. So you get like that extra insight. But honestly, you mentioned the security piece, like that's a big need. But just for you as an example, just for listeners, because I think it's great when people get live examples. When people have a lot of like, if they're really finding themselves to be a bit of a perfectionist at times, often it's both a security need, but also a set of limiting beliefs. And the major limiting beliefs, there's some core beliefs that show up regularly for people. And I'm curious if you notice yours, if I share them. So you'll hear things, and it's probably not the ones I'm going to rattle off first. I'm just saying these for anybody listening. I will be abandoned. I will be alone. I will be disliked, rejected, not good enough. I will be trapped, helpless, powerless, shamed or seen as defective, weak. If I'm vulnerable or open up too much, I am unsafe. I cannot trust. I am unseen, unheard, unimportant. I don't matter. And those are some of like the biggest ones you'll see. Unworthy, I am bad is another one as well. I am stupid is another core belief, and I'm disrespected. And that's actually all of them. So those are like the major ones.
Those are some big ones. Yeah.
Yeah. And those are the ones that you'll hear in people's like when they feel stuck. Those are the ones that you'll hear them run up against. It's like those same things. And those same beliefs will be the things that trigger us most, that will be the biggest glass ceilings in our lives in many cases, because we're often, you said a moment ago, like I found myself hiding. Usually it's not the business you're hiding from, it's your beliefs being triggered about the business that you're hiding from. And so it's really useful for people to narrow down like what those big core beliefs are. And then I'm happy to share like a reprogramming tool in a moment as well. But did you notice anything that showed up for you around the perfection part?
It really came down to, and one of my mentors had mentioned, fear of failure isn't as much for me as it was like that fear of success. And there's certainly an element of vulnerability in that, or that fear of being successful, like held me back so much. And even it still limits to this day because I haven't really completely worked through it, but it's way more powerful than I had realized.
Yeah. Are you comfortable if I ask you one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So if I am successful, what am I afraid will then happen? Because success is not the actual fear. It's what you associate success with that will be the actual fear.
Yeah, and I think it has to do with something has to change. Or if I'm successful, then it's that unknown. I know what life is like now, but that unknown is, which is kind of weird because I love change.
Yeah. But you can have a change need, like it wouldn't be change, it would be novelty as a need. But you can have a core wound or limiting belief that says, I am unsafe. And often that can be a big one, like this fear of if everything changes and I can't predict or control things, it can be I am out of control or helpless or I am unsafe. Do either of those like resonate a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, not being in control, because even though I like to think that I'm not a control freak, I am a bit of a.
And that's okay. But then what you would do is if those resonate, you would plug them into a reprogramming tool. And I'm happy to share one for the listeners too. And hopefully it's okay that I'm asking you so many questions. I actually find it's like the best way for people listening in to learn as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to hear reprogramming.
Yeah. So basically how this works, it's called auto-suggestion. And the first thing we have to understand is that our conscious mind doesn't hold the limiting beliefs. Nobody wakes up all day and says, today I'm going to tell myself 100 times that I'm not good enough and see how I feel. So these are not conscious choices. These are subconscious pre-existing programs that come from past experiences. Now, when we look at how we actually speak to our subconscious mind, our conscious mind speaks language, but our subconscious mind does not. And here's how you'll know is if I say to you, okay, whatever you do not think of the pink elephant. Probably pictured a pink elephant, right? You can't help it. And so what ends up happening is the conscious mind hears do not, or it's like, do not think of the chocolate chip cookie or do not think of the salad. Like you end up thinking about it. So your conscious hears do not, your subconscious actually speaks in emotions and images. So in order to change this existing program, we can't like just affirmation our way out of it because affirmations are just your conscious mind talking to your conscious mind. So we actually have to use our conscious mind to speak to our subconscious. So let's just use the example of I'm not good enough. So step one, we go, what's the core belief? I'm not good enough. What's its opposite? I am good enough. For anybody who heard a core wound from earlier and they're like, oh, I'm trapped or I'm unsafe, you can look up antonyms on the internet if you want to find the opposite, but they should be pretty self-explanatory. So step one, what's that core belief and its opposite? Step two, we then have to speak in emotions and images to our own subconscious mind. And how we actually do this is through memory. Every single memory we have is just a container of emotions and images. If you were to say your favorite childhood memory and you start talking about it and you're like, oh, I was playing on the playground with my friends, you would see the images of the slide and you would smile as you're telling the story because our memories still hold emotions. Our subconscious really stores everything. So what we need from a neuroplasticity perspective is we need a repetition because repetition fires and wires neural pathways and eventually creates neural networks. So we need repetition of memories because that gives us repetition of emotions and images, and we repeatedly speak to our subconscious mind. So step one, what's your core belief and its opposite? Step two, we need 10 for repetition, memories of when we felt the opposite. So for example, 10 memories of a time somebody felt good enough. And they don't have to be big emotional memories. They can be like, oh, I was a really good friend yesterday. Or 3 days ago, my boss complimented me at work. Or I showed up really well to push myself out of my comfort zone last week. Like it can just be these little things. We just need 10 of them. And then we listen back to this. We record it somewhere, like in your phone or on your computer, and you listen back to it. It takes like 3 minutes a day. You listen back for 21 days because research into neuroplasticity shows that we create pretty solidified neural networks within a 21-day period that now get hardwired into our subconscious mind And that's where we're most likely to have this entirely new program that really, really sticks.
I love that. Because it feels like something that you can actually do. And it's, I don't want to say easy because it might not necessarily be easy, but it's simple, straightforward, and doable.
Absolutely. And again, if people are like, I don't have any proof I'm good enough or anything like that, if they ever feel really stuck, which happens rarely, but it does, you can also start more general and get specific. So you can say, like, it is possible that I'm improving and start there. And as you start to feel like, okay, I'm building momentum, then you can say, okay, it's possible that I'm becoming good enough. And then we can start moving to that next step so that everything feels like it's believable, resonates with our subconscious, and then we can keep picking up steam.
Yeah. And I've done things like that before where you have to write nice things about yourself. And I feel like the first couple are hard because you're so used to saying nice things about other people. And then when it comes to yourself, that becomes difficult. But I have found that as you get into it, it's almost like much easier. And it's almost like, I can't stop. I'm wonderful. Like it's really nice too. So,
Absolutely. And it's exactly what you're saying. You pick up momentum. We actually have this mechanism in our brain called the reticular activating system, or RAS. You'll often hear it referred to. And its job is to filter out information. And it filters things according to basically repetition. It's how your conscious communicates to your subconscious to start filtering. So if you've ever had the experience, the most common example people will use of like, you are deciding you're going to buy a new car, and let's say it's like a white Jeep. And you never notice white Jeeps on the road, but now that you're looking at them, you see them everywhere. And so it's because your subconscious will actually start filtering out and prioritizing what we have coming in repeatedly. And it's actually a really important principle for reconditioning our neural pathways, because if you start bringing in that stuff, where you start focusing on how you are good enough, or you start shifting your internal dialogue to have these habits, it will pick up steam on its own. Like, we'll naturally build that momentum because our reticular activating system gets on board and starts noticing times during the day. Oh, I did that and that was good enough. Oh, I did that, and so we pick up that momentum naturally as a result too.
okay. Now, you also wrote a book, Learning Love. Tell us a little bit about this book and how does it relate to all the personal development stuff you're doing?
Yeah, so it's basically the science of first attachment theory. And we created a body of work called Gibson Integrated Attachment Theory, which takes the original John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth research out of Cambridge University on our attachment styles, or basically love styles and relationships, and helps us understand not just what those different styles are at a deeper level, but how we can change them to go from insecurely attached to securely attached. So every person has an attachment style. There's four major ones. They are the secure attachment style, who statistically does the best in relationships, has the longest lasting relationships, but arguably more importantly, reports feeling the happiest in those long lasting relationships as well. And then we have three insecure attachment styles. At one end of the continuum, there's an anxious attachment style. Anxious attachment styles are often needy or clingy in relationships. They fear abandonment, being disliked, alone, some of those core beliefs we talked about earlier. Dismissive avoidance, they fear being trapped or engulfed. They fear being weak if they're too vulnerable or open. They fear being seen as defective or shamed or criticized. They really take those things to heart. And they fear being unsafe if they're in a conflict or too far outside of their own comfort zone. And then the last attachment style is the fearful avoidant. And they really fear trusting. They really fear letting their guard down. They tend to have a lot more sort of tumultuous experiences with relationships in their upbringing, more trauma generally. And so they have this really interesting contradiction where they fear abandonment and they want closeness, but then when people actually get close, they push them away. So they're very hot and cold. And basically, what we've developed as a body of work is how we can first recognize our attachment style very clearly, but then secondly, how we can recondition these patterns at the subconscious level to become securely attached if we find that that's an area that we're feeling really stuck. And if we find that relationships have been a really hard thing for us in the long run, maybe we feel like we're always fearing abandonment and we hold on so tight, accidentally push people away, or we always fear engulfment. And so we end up pushing people away before they even get close to us at all. Or on the flip side, if somebody's like hot and cold all the time and they can have more volatility or fighting in relationships because they're always on that roller coaster of push-pull. So it helps us really change those patterns. And basically how we get those patterns first is what was modeled to us in our own childhood and upbringing. And so we adopted those, brought those patterns inwards. And of course, that's what really forms our attachment style.
And is your book related? Like, is it built into the personal development school? I mean, how does that relate to that?
Yeah. So the book is basically the summary of how we change our attachment style. And there's some like worksheets and exercises, but The personal development school is like a bigger space. You know, I said we have 60 plus courses. Well, a big portion of those, about a third of those, are about attachment styles. So, how to reprogram your attachment wounds, how to reprogram your boundaries if you have poor boundaries, how to communicate differently, how to learn to meet your needs and requests for them. So, all these things have to do with those different attachment styles and how we can transform what's not working for us so that we can actually move to becoming securely attached. So, I would say the book is the summation of it, really boiled down. And then the courses in the personal development school have a lot to do with that. There's a lot more like hand-holding and support for people in there. But then we also have all these other courses on top of that about personal development as a whole.
So, looking back on your career and the extensive work that you've done in personal development and relationship dynamics, I mean, what do you see as your crowning achievement or your most fulfilling achievement?
I would say building the school. I mean, it's been so cool, honestly. I think just in full transparency, when I started the school, I was worried, like, will this be as helpful as one-to-one sessions for people? Like, I wasn't sure. And I knew that we wanted to have like a lot of follow-up support. But one of the things that I think made me successful in private practice first is that I really believe in the idea of like teach the man to fish instead of give the man a fish. And I had an original background. One of the big modalities I studied was hypnosis. So I had this background in hypnosis, hypnotherapy, and people would come in for these sessions. And I didn't like hypnotizing people. I felt like it was like give the man a fish every day. And I thought that the power dynamics were strange. And I was like, well, you're helping people momentarily, but they always have to come back and rely on you. And so in my practice, I started teaching people how their own subconscious mind works and how we can recondition it on our own and giving people tools. And that was a big part of what I did in my practice. So I was worried, like, will that work at scale? Will that work with people? But to date, we've had over 40,000 students come in and take our programs at different times over the last few years. And we have seen that we have an NPS score, which is like people's satisfaction score. And we have a 99.7% NPS score for our business, which like makes me really, really happy because I know it means that things are really working for people. And I'm hands-on with people through the week and I teach different classes and webinars and the support groups and things. And I see like the transformation. And it's so cool because I feel like I'm giving tools and then people are doing that work and learning for themselves. And then people come in and they like see new students come in and they like tell them, oh, make sure you do this and this. And they know it so well. And like, it's really, really been a blessing to see.
How long does it typically take somebody to, I guess, achieve milestones or to see change?
So 21 days is when we're going to really see the change on beliefs, on needs, on boundary issues, communication patterns, because that's how long it takes to really hardwire these neural pathways. So generally people are learning for their first 9 to 10 days on a specific course and then applying for another 21. So within 30 days, people get really big breakthroughs. When it comes to more complex issues, so things like changing your attachment style, because there's usually some major pillars. It's like your limiting beliefs, your unmet needs, your nervous system needs to get regulated. And then we need to have boundaries and communication improve. In that space, we have 90-day boot camps for people. So we're like, hey, come in for your 90 days. Here's the coursework to do. Here's how to show up and really move through these things. So depending on the issues, if they have more than one pillar behind it, then we're looking at generally 90 days. Or if there's one specific thing somebody's coming in for, like reprogramming my limiting beliefs about my success or learning to meet my needs and understand what they are, that's where we're really seeing that 30-day window.
So do you find that the group program, I mean, clearly you couldn't have worked one-on-one with 40,000 students, like that was not possible. But do you find that it's more successful as a group program than one-on-one in that aspect that you can help so many more people? Or, I mean, is there something that's lost in the group setting?
Honestly, and like maybe I'm biased because I'm really happy with this, but like I personally find that it's better this way because people come in and sometimes in one-to-one settings, there's so much like information I want to tell people, like, here's how your subconscious works, here's how the reprogramming works, here's, and people would be in one-on-one settings. And I'd have to really like be mindful not to just fire hose information at people in client sessions, but my intention was for them to walk away with tools. And so what I love about PDS is like they come in, they have these self-paced courses, they do them themselves, and they come in for the peer support group. They already have that foundational knowledge. And now when it comes to working through like little things where they need an extra pointer somewhere, it's like so much easier to see transformation quickly because they get how it works. So I actually find it to be way better for people and that they walk away knowing what I know. They walk away being like, in 10 years from now, if they go through loss or they're grieving something, they know how to work through that. Or if they go through a career problem where they're challenged or stuck, they have the tools to recondition the limiting beliefs that they come up. So it's cool because I'm hoping that I'm really empowering people for life to have this lifetime of tools that they can always refer back to if they're ever feeling stuck.
Yeah, I love that. So, what key piece of advice would you offer to listeners who are seeking to understand their own relationship patterns or aspire to cultivate more like healthier, more secure connections in their lives?
I would definitely say learn about your attachment style because it really is the number one thing that affects your relationships. The way I like to think of our attachment style is it's the subconscious set of rules you have about love and connection, how to give love, how to receive it, how to communicate, what you're expecting from somebody and how you expect them to behave or operate, what your big fears are. Like it really covers so many of those really crucial arenas when we connect with people. But what's funny is that when we don't know that we have an attachment style, and even more than that, when we don't realize that somebody we're in a relationship with has a different attachment style than us, it's like you sit down to play a board game and you have a different rule book for the game. It's like, oh, you're trying to play Scrabble, I'm trying to play Monopoly. Like, even if we like each other and we're trying to have a good time and our heart's in the right place, we're going to get frustrated sometimes because I'm trying to like win the free parking and you're like trying to put the letters down. So it creates like all this unnecessary havoc in our relationships. But as soon as we learn that we have an attachment style and that people have different attachment needs and ways that they operate, it really opens up for us to not take things so personally with how other people are behaving and how they tend to communicate. It helps us also understand our own needs and the other person's better. And it really improves the quality of relationships very fast.
I love that. So, where do people go if they want to purchase the book and join the school?
Yeah, so they can go to personaldevelopmentschool.com if they want to check out any of our programs that we have in there. And that's also the name of our YouTube channel. It's Personal Development School Thais Gibson. And then on Amazon and select bookstores, but I would just check out Amazon for the Learning Love book as well that talks about the attachment patterns.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing this with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Beyond the Medical Algorithm is brought to you by the Philly Wellness Center. To find out more about the Philly Wellness Center and how we're challenging conventional medical wisdom and shedding light on more natural means of healing and therapy, visit phillywellnesscenter.com. And then make sure to search for Holistic Health in Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Google Podcast, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at the Philly Wellness Center, keep celebrating the innate power in our incredible bodies, and thanks for listening.